Titusville, Pennsylvania, 1872. Down with the conspirators, reads one banner. No compromise, says another. The protesters, small independent oil refiners, marched toward the railroad junction, led by local oilman Franklin Tarbell. They swarm over the rail yard, flipping rail cars, spilling their cargo of oil barrels, and smashing open any marked with the Standard Oil logo. News has leaked that John D Rockefeller's rising giant, the Standard Oil Company, has brokered a secret deal with the railroads. The rail barons will double their transportation rates on all oil producers, but give Standard a rebate, driving small independent producers out of business so Rockefeller can buy them out. But despite the Pennsylvania legislature dissolving this backroom deal, things are already in motion. Through strong-arm tactics and ruthless expansion, Standard will soon control the U.S. oil market, making Rockefeller the richest person on earth. Franklin Tarbell cannot stop Rockefeller. No man can. Because it will be Franklin's 14-year-old daughter, Ida, who will break Standard Oil. Thanks so much to CuriosityStream for helping to keep this history flowing. To get a discounted deal with Nebula included, check out the link in the description below. By the turn of the 20th century, a few massive corporations, often called the trusts, due to the corporate structure they were organized under, dominated American life. From railroads to meat to steel and oil, trusts strangled competition and wielded more political power than many senators and governors. But in 1901, the trusts would find a new opponent. A president unexpectedly thrust into the role, Theodore Roosevelt, who would usher in the era of trust busting. Yet the story of trust busting doesn't begin with him, because while Roosevelt disliked the monopolies, to take on such powerful business interests, he would need massive public support for action. Public support that would not come from Washington, but from a magazine office. The offices of McClure's Magazine, New York City, 1901. In the 31 years after her father fought Standard in Titusville, Ida Tarbell has come a long way. She's now 44 years old and an editor at the prestigious magazine McClure's. One of the few American women with a science degree, she became a specialist in writing about technical topics like public works and the military, as well as blockbuster serialized biographies of Napoleon and Abraham Lincoln. But as Tarbell and her research assistant shuffle through contracts, corporate documents, legislative transcripts, and interviews, it's quickly becoming clear that this next story will be her biggest yet. A history of the Standard Oil Company, its rise, and its misdeeds. A series so dangerous that Tarbell's father warns her not to do it. In fact, the magazine's funding has already been threatened by a Rockefeller-owned bank. But Tarbell practices a new kind of journalism, one that relies on public documents, legislative and court transcripts, and verifiable facts, in addition to interviews. It's so new that the discipline doesn't even have a name yet, though today we call it investigative journalism. Now, the magazine decided to look at Standard because, unlike the rest of the trusts, it had a single owner and will be an easier story to tell. The history of Standard will provide a window into how these companies control American commerce. And Tarbell's first task is looking at the earliest days of Standard Oil and its founder, John D Rockefeller. Born in upstate New York in 1839, Rockefeller grew up in financial insecurity. His father, Doc Rockefeller, was a con artist who masqueraded as a doctor, selling fake cures on the road. So during his absence, John was forced to step up, raising turkeys to help the family. His mother, a devout Baptist, taught him the principles of hard work, thrift, and charitable giving. While his father, by contrast, taught his children by swindling them as a way to keep them sharp. In fact, once, Doc Rockefeller held out his arms, urging young John to jump from a high chair into his grasp. Then, when John took the leap, Doc just let him fall. "Never trust anyone completely," he told his son. "Even me." Doc ditched the family when Rockefeller was 16, disappearing from public record. Young John became a bookkeeper to support the family, and then by age 20 had gone into business for himself, branching into refining oil with several partners. But by 1870, he'd pushed said partners out and took control of what was now dubbed Standard Oil. America ran on oil, specifically kerosene, which lit homes in a way that was cleaner and more efficient than whale oil. And that was exactly how Rockefeller liked things, clean and efficient. And as Tarbell researches his methods, she finds herself impressed, indeed even admiring Rockefeller. He was a major innovator, because at the time, when refining petroleum, often only about 60% became usable as kerosene, while much of the rest were flammable byproducts that they dumped into rivers and lakes, making them, occasionally, catch on fire. But Rockefeller turned many of these byproducts into lubricants, chewing gum, paint, and even figured out that one of the biggest waste products, gasoline, could fuel his factory machinery. And while Tarbell applauded these innovations, her admiration didn't extend to Rockefeller's business practices. He expanded aggressively, buying out his competitors, and if they didn't take his offer, he'd undercut their prices and dive rivals into unprofitability before purchasing the ruined corporations. And this was a thing he didn't just do to rivals, but also friends who'd helped him get started in business. He also began to expand vertically, buying barrel makers, oil producers, distributors, lumber companies, and chemical manufacturers, so he could control every part of the supply and distribution chain. And eventually, he would invest in pipelines, so Standard could stop paying railroads and move its product more efficiently. Rockefeller also had, let's say, a strange feeling about capitalism and money. He looked on his mission to expand Standard as almost a divine calling. In his mind, he was making the oil market more efficient and costs lower. He treated employees well and rewarded those who took his buyouts. But if they resisted, he bankrupted them without mercy, often via secret deals. It was God's will, he believed, for the strong and well-run to conquer the weak and inefficient. In 1872, Standard bought 22 of its 26 rival oil producers in Ohio within 3 months. An event remembered as the Cleveland Massacre. And it was only the start. For within a decade, Standard would control 90% of the US oil market and about 85% of the global market. As she begins to write, Tarbell reflects that she does not begrudge Rockefeller's success, or even Standard's growth. It's the tactics she considers unfair. Standard offering products at such a discount that competition was forced to sell and become part of it. The backroom deals, bribery of public officials. Tactics like the South Improvement Company, the entity formed in order to facilitate the secret deal between Standard and the railroad companies that put her father out of business. She finds a book about Pennsylvania's investigation of the deal in the New York Public Library, the only remaining copy after Standard destroyed the rest. She gathers details from legislative minutes and lawsuits, turning rumor into fact, forming a picture of the Southern Improvement Scheme and uncovering evidence that even after the deal fell apart, Standard continued to collude with the railroads to get anti-competitive rebates on shipping its products. But she finds more than that. Crossing the country, she talks to grocers driven out of business by Standard. Standard employees would come threaten them, saying that if the grocers refused to switch to Standard products, the company would open a rival store. And they would follow through, offering such discounted goods that no grocer could survive. She also charted how Standard's reorganization as a trust in 1885 actually circumvented antitrust laws. Many states forbid a single company working across state lines. So, Standard formed a trust company in New York that gave orders to smaller state-based companies with names like Standard of Ohio. In truth, Rockefeller controlled them all. But Tarbell had an odd ally in understanding Standard. Henry Rogers, the trust's vice president. Believing the articles will be complimentary, he granted her access, answering every charge she made, helping her understand Standard's perspective. However, when the article is published, he would not like what she had to say, because she'd learned far more than Rogers knew, and she learned it from an unusual source. 1904, New York City. Tarbell can see the man is nervous. He wants to leave. He stammers out a story about a kid he teaches in Sunday school, an office boy at Standard headquarters, the one who burns documents. Except when the boy saw his teacher's name on some of the papers, rather than putting them in the furnace, he brought them to him instead. The man, you see, is also a small-time oil refiner. Tarbell opens the man's briefcase and sees a stack of paper. Price lists, train tables, distribution routes, all with dates and amounts. But none of these are for Standard's products. They're for Standard's competitors. And this information is all Standard needs to undercut its rivals, flood markets, and manipulate oil prices to stay on top. It's hard evidence of something that Tarbell has suspected for years. Standard bribes railroad agents to provide data on its competitors' shipments. Rockefeller isn't preternaturally good at reading the market. He's just running a nationwide espionage network. And it's this revelation that will win her the support and attention of a new fan, President Theodore Roosevelt. But stop the presses, because we've got an exclusive. Due to support from our friends at Nebula, we were able to create a bonus episode of Extra History over on their platform, specifically about the ever-controversial cat lover, Tipu Sultan. Now, we're not kidding around when we say we've wanted to do this episode for a while now, but since this famous ruler of Mysore is considered either a magnanimous ruler or a brutal tyrant, we were a little concerned with what the YouTube algorithm would do if it ever got its paws on this one. Cat puns for days. Why Nebula? Well, they're a streaming service by creators for creators, featuring original content from some of our favorite educational entertainers on the internet, such as Lindsay Ellis, Lessons from the Screenplay, Tierzoo, and Legal Eagle. Plus, now you can see extra credits, extra history, and extra mythology all over on Nebula without ads, like the one you're watching now. And for a bonus extra, how about a 2-for-1 deal? If you sign up for Nebula using our link in the description, not only will you be helping to support our channel, thank you for that by the way, but you'll also get access to CuriosityStream. You know, the online learning platform where you can watch thousands of amazing documentaries and award-winning original series. You'll get both of these amazing resources for only $14.97 for an entire year, which at 26% off the regular price is, let me just check my math here, carry the 4. Oh yeah, here it is, a pretty dang sweet deal. So whether you want to learn about World War II codebreakers on CuriosityStream, which I've been loving by the way, see thousands of Venezuelans making a living playing RuneScape in digital gold miners on Nebula, or just want to hear our take on Tipu, this deal's the best way to scratch that edutainment itch. This show wouldn't be possible without legendary patrons like Ahmed Ziad Turk, Alicia Bramble, Casey Muscha, Dominic Valenciana, Gunnar Clovis, Kyle Murgatroyd, and O'Reels1.